not working hard. No.
What's after the millennials again?
Gen Z.
It's Gen Z, yeah.
Or the zennials? Do we sometimes hear that?
I've never heard that. Is that
I
something
think it's
that-
the same thing.
Yeah.
I've heard it.
Yeah, I would imagine. Well, actually, I think I would consider myself a zennial.
Yeah.
Oh, by
Like
being on the cusp?
in-between.
We're on the
Yeah.
cusp. We're like right on the cusp.
My
so.
sister, who's what, a year younger than you or something,
Yeah.
or 2 years, she, I think she pretty fervently claims to the, end of the millennial.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, it's
as her
because the
generation.
Gen Zers are very distinct in a way that the
Yeah.
millennials were.
Well, I think she's got some definition that's like, do you remember dial-up or something?
Yeah.
The classic one
Yeah, I
is,
don't know
do
if
you
it's that.
remember
9/11?
9/11? Like, would you remember distinctly where you were during
I don't think
9/11?
she would.
Yeah.
She would have been like less than 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I have vague memories of it, just vague ones. And so, some people say that means I'm a Gen Zer, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. But that's the thing, is that we're, nomads. We have no home, because we don't identify enough with the millennials to say that we are them. But the Gen Zers, we flirt with both sides.
People in our age group like to talk about the simultaneously having a VHS and a DVD player simultaneously. Right?
Yeah,
at
yeah.
a time.
That's
yeah.
the big one.
Yeah, that's a good one. We actually, that came up this week at Thanksgiving with my family, whether there still is one in the house. The 9/11 thing is interesting because it would, I completely understand, like, do you remember it? Like, can you articulate it as it being is the single most relevant cultural touch point, whatever, for a person that age.
Yeah.
But it's really different to have been like 5 versus I was 16.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I tried to go and talk to the military recruiters like that fall.
Yeah.
So I think I want to object to the younger ones saying like they remember it the same way like somebody was like driving and like, I don't know, who had, this wasn't me, but had travel plans affected. Well, eventually like, we were standing in these security lines that were like 3 hours long. Do you guys even remember that?
No,
Definitely
Yeah.
not.
So I like the way, I guess I'm saying like,
Yeah,
if you have a vague memory of 9/11, not that you were claiming it, but if you
No.
have a vague memory of 9/11, like versus actually like living in America as like a sentient being, in a couple years afterwards, is really different.
A friend of mine, a previous person on the podcast, Nick Rowan, claims it was his first memory. The first thing that he remembers is 9/11, which sounds like a romantic
like
interpretation.
sort of an aesthetic choice.
Yeah,
but-
aesthetic choice more than
which
anything
is kind
else.
of, I think, in poor taste to make that your sort of aesthetic
Potentially.
choice.
Yeah,
But
that's the problem.
yeah,
It's kind of like one of these things that like if you're forcing a memory, obviously you would force that. Like if if your subconscious is trying to tell you remember something, that would be one of the things.
Yeah. It's there's quite the big divide though between people who do remember though and don't, because for anybody younger than us, basically, 9/11 is just purely ironic at this point, right?
What does that mean?
As in like like the 9/11 joke is passé now.
The
right.
9/11 joke.
Yeah, like people making jokes about 9/11.
Okay.
Like people like our age and younger, that's just it doesn't even move the radar. It's not edgy even.
I don't even know a 9/11 joke. What's
Yeah.
a 9/11 joke?
Well, there's no
like?
I don't know. There's
it's basically just editing 9/11 related content into whatever meme.
like a music
is-
video that has like footage of the towers. Like it's edgy stuff. If to anybody who's
Phew,
older
you
than us.
Zennials, this so disrespectful.
I know exactly.
Am I the oldest person you've had on your podcast, by the way?
I don't think so.
Well,
Well,
how old are you again?
37.
37? No, our dad.
Yeah.
And our mom.
All right.
Significantly older. so-
Genetic thing. That's a little different.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, I mean because that's understandable, right?
Yeah.
You're bringing your parents on.
To be expected.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
I appreciate you guys branching out.
Well, hey, you know what? That means a lot. Our viewers are looking for more and more content, and a
Yeah.
wider berth. So,
Well, so you have a perspective. There we go. I feel like everyone else that we would have had on the show would have been nodding along. Yes,
Oh,
of
yes,
course.
those 9/11 memes.
Entirely passe.
I know what memes are. I want to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
clear here.
No, no, I know that.
I'm square, but I'm not quite that square. I'm just
Yeah.
saying 9/11, it sounds a little bit.
Yeah. Well, especially for the only time because even for me, and I don't necessarily remember. I remember some flashes of 9/11, and mostly it's probably just from being raised in the milieu and stuff. But I remember going to the memorial in New York City, and that was the first time I ever felt anything, like a
I
real
went-
tangible nature
Yeah,
to it.
I went when it was still a hole.
Yeah.
We went I don't know. But maybe it had to be the following spring, but it may have been one more after that. I don't remember how long it took him to unhole
Unhold it.
I think it must have been the spring of 2002. I'm not sure.
Well, the holes
but-
are still there. That's the weirdest thing about the memorial. I've never liked that.
I
about
see.
them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That I think I agree with you.
Yeah.
That's a little Yeah.
It's a little bleak.
Yeah, a
it's
little
just a
macabre.
hole with
Yeah.
waterfalls going into the hole.
But it was
and
still an
stuff.
active construction site.
Yeah,
is I
yeah,
guess
yeah.
what I- like or
Yeah.
cleanup-
Giuliani, the
cleanup
height of his
site.
power.
No,
you
he
know?
would have been out because he
Oh,
was
okay.
out. You young kids, you don't remember any of this stuff. He was. If I remember right, the New York's got a September primary system, and I think that 9/11 is a Tuesday, and that
Yeah.
was primary day,
Mm.
and so the election. I mean, people couldn't vote and stuff.
Yeah.
So they did some janky thing. I don't even remember if it was like really legal or what, but he like remained the mayor for like a little bit of extra time. Like I
Yeah.
think he was done in early 2002. He should have been done at the
Well, it's
end,
because he
end
was
of the
busy
year.
being America's mayor simultaneously.
And they hadn't elected anybody.
Yeah.
So I think I don't remember the details, but it's something
Yeah.
like they had to do some amendment to the charter or some nonsense, or I mean honestly they probably just had to kind of fake it till they made it. You
Yeah.
know, but
Which is
they-
understandable in this circumstance, right?
Yeah. Sort of
foreseen.
extra legal circumstance.
That would have been kind of funny to be the challenger in that moment, standing up and be like, excuse me.
He was done.
Yeah.
He was done.
Yeah,
I would
he
like to be
wasn't
mayor
running.
now. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, is that when Bloomberg got elected?
I don't. Was it?
No, Bloomberg was mayor. Well, like I remember Bloomberg being mayor when we were kids.
Yeah, but he was
because-
mayor for like 12 years.
Oh yeah, you're right. That might have been it because he didn't do the whole attack on soda until we were in, I don't know, like middle school, early high school.
Yeah, I think that Bloomberg got elected then. I remember Bloomberg, he got elected as a Republican.
Yeah. Yeah, that was his whole MO, is the business friendly Republican. Well, he's one of my favorite 2020 campaigns by far.
Mhm.
It's one of the most expensive. There was a whole bunch of like shenanigans going on behind the scenes where he paid up a bunch of money up front to interns and then like promised them jobs for X amount of time. And
Okay.
then when the campaign fell out,
I thought you were going to say like paid a bunch of money to like all the consultants to keep them from
No,
working for other people or
well,
something.
that's true.
I mean, that's a
so-
common one for
yeah.
the rich guy to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so he did that, but then of course they never actually got their money. So the campaign fell through,
Mm.
and then rather than them being, because they signed up like, oh, I'll make $30,000, which in politics is actually a pretty good amount of money for
a
graduating.
youth, yeah.
for a youth. I'll pay you $30,000 for a year, regardless of how the campaign goes. And then the second he drops out of the race, the money stops coming in.
Mhm.
And then the only state he carried in the primary was the territory of American Samoa. And I was reading this article.
Did he campaign? I mean, like that's
Well, so he put a ton of money into it, and I think American Samoa only like 4,000 or 5,000 people vote, period, and so it's really high impact. And the funny thing is they loved him. Like you could look up photos of a bunch of Samoan guys just like wearing Bloomberg shirts and being like, yes, Bloomberg, and then it all fell through.
Yeah.
I remember for the radio show I was working for at the time, I edited a compilation of his gaffes during the campaign to the American Samoan anthem. It was a hit.
Yeah, that sounds like journalism right
Yeah,
there.
it was
Yeah,
real
high
journalism.
Goodness gracious.
That's what you're doing with that fancy journalism degree. You got.
My minor
Yeah.
from Hillsdale College in journalism.
Guys, we got Andrew Fink, Representative Andrew Fink, on the podcast today. Here to talk about whatever. We're not here to talk about politics necessarily.
You want to know if my monomania is politics?
I hope it isn't, Andrew. To be honest,
A lifelong love is not the same. It's a
monomaniac.
Monomaniacs.
I don't know
Obsession.
if love is exactly the right term.
duty.
Look,
right?
here's a situation.
Mhm.
Is that I see a lifelong love? I mean, okay, so yeah, it's not exactly the same thing. And I have to. I mean, I would be lying to you if I said that the experience I've had for the last week or so, regarding using all of my free time
Mhm.
to think really hard about college football, I would be lying. if I pretended like, no, I've been like reading a lot about how like the micro states that formed Italy and Germany, and like how when you turn on the Olympics and you see this like blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy named like Christian Hansen or Newberg or something skiing for Italy, and you're like, wait a second, and then like they show you where he's from, and you're like, and you zoom, you need to zoom in to see whether it's on the Austrian border, which side of the border. I would be lying if I said it was like something like that.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about college football.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing too. Because,
Well, I mean, it was
who
a
knows
big,
what would happen if
it
I
was
wasn't
a
thinking about it.
big weekend for being a Michigander and liking college football.
This
Yeah.
is true.
Yeah,
And so,
Michiganian.
Michigan.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Well, it's in the law. The older Michiganians. I mean, I'm just saying it's a law.
It's the law.
well,
It's the law.
as a representative, he should know, Shad. So I would say back
The
down.
fact that
back down.
the fact that this is, I can't remember who it is. Somebody talking about
Yeah.
like some politician having the skill of identifying every 70-30 issue and getting on the 30% side.
Yeah.
This is
Michiganian is definitely a 30% side.
according to the last poll I saw, it's like a 14% side. And that's how you know that I'm not a sellout.
Yeah,
all right. I'm not just because I'm not gonna lick my finger and put it in the wind.
Yeah.
To see if I should say Michiganian or
dude.
Michigander. I'm not gonna do it.
Yeah.
There
So
you
wait,
go.
so what law specifically?
The Older Michiganians Act is the one to which I'm referring.
Oh, okay.
As I understand it, there are some that say Michigander elsewhere, but I don't know about the. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, hey, look at the evidence that falls to your side of the
14%,
argument, right? There
well,
you
I'm
go.
just saying I know that law. I mean,
Yeah.
does anybody know what are the others? I mean, I've heard about
I
it,
like
just
the
don't know.
idea of that 14% though being a vocal constituency.
Oh, it's very passionate. I
Yeah.
mean, that's true. You know, there's the whole balance of, you know, the persuadables and then firing up your base. And I have the base on this one. Absolutely. Michiganian.
There you go.
There's no doubt about it.
All perfect. So, college football, right? That's your sort of focus for the last.
Is
couple
that
of
your
weeks.
monomaniacal thing? Is that what you're bringing to Monomaniacs?
Yeah,
this
I mean,
week?
to be honest, like it's
Yeah.
probably more of a monomania than anything. Like if I came in here and I was talking about like, you know, how I was learning about like Wrigley's chewing gum flavors in the 1920s or whatever, like that's not a mania in the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
way that college football, it makes people sick. I mean, it turns
Yeah.
people into total morons,
Yeah.
even if they aren't already.
Yeah.
Many of us are, but
So important question to preface this. You know, as a Michigander or
Michiganian.
Michiganian.
Yep.
Did you just
Michiganian.
alienate both
I have-
of the sides of that?
No. I didn't alienate both sides. I bridged the gap between the two.
I have a friend who pushed Michiganeer for a long time. I think he's given up.
That sounds sort of like something that's an explorer. right?
Yes,
You know,
I think that's why I like this.
Yeah.
More of an active,
There
you
you
know.
go. Yeah. So, are you a state or university fan?
I'm a University of Michigan
Okay.
fan.
All right,
Yeah.
there you go. My father-in-law, you know, if you would have said state, he would have turned off the episode right there. So, you know.
Oof, we can't lose our 41st viewer here.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
exactly.
but I will say, like, it's I put a little, you know, it's not something that I talk about all the time, and here I am talking about it on the most widely distributed video podcast I've ever participated in.
There you go.
There we go.
Yeah.
But you know, in my district, I have to look this up, but I might have the most tillable acreage of any state representative in Michigan because up north where the districts are larger, it's you know
Not
bunch
very
of trees
tillable.
and
Yeah.
mines and stuff, so it's not
The
not
Michigan
farmed.
copper.
Yeah, the copper mines and all that nonsense. So there are, and Michigan State, for the uninitiated, is the ag school. It's founded as Michigan Agricultural College. MUU, you know, some people would derisively say. I don't think that kind of thing is funny, so I never say that, but some people do. And so in my district, you know, many of my friends and allies are Michigan State people, and so I try to be somewhat delicate about it.
Yeah.
I don't. I didn't like text a bunch of them after we beat them by 22 points earlier this year. I mean, I did. I waited till I saw them to mention.
Yes,
it.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes.
In
And
person.
very, diplomatically.
Yeah, just stating the facts. I mean,
Yeah.
what do you want me to? I mean, it's a straight talk express.
Yeah.
yeah.
100%.
Yeah. So you're probably very excited about how U of M is doing this year then, right? Is this rekindled a focus on college football for you, or is this a yearly occurrence?
And this is the stupid thing about college football is
Yeah.
that there's 131 teams
Yeah.
in major college football or division. What used to be Division 1A, now it's the FBS Football Bowl Series subdivision, whatever. Yes. And 130 of them don't win the championship every year. And you know, that's like, it's obviously it's true in every sporting league or whatever.
But there isn't that many franchises.
Exactly. Like the number of the percentage of the fan base that is angry, usually multiple times during the year, is enormous. I mean, I don't know. Like, I actually think it'd be interesting, probably more interesting than having like a Michigan fan on would be to have like a South Florida or a Toledo fan on or something, and like ask them what it's like to follow, you know, what is technically the highest level of football, and that they're in FBS, but they're not really competing for a national championship. I don't actually know exactly what that's like, but following a team that like won one when I was a kid and you know, won the Big Ten a whole in the night. I mean, the Michigan was the most dominant team in the Big Ten in the 90s when I'm a kid, and then especially when that falls off, just like it turns your life into misery. And yet every season you're just like, well, here I go again.
Yeah.
Well, so the nice thing about Michigan, I think in particular, to speak on that point, is that they do have the outlet of college football because they have the Lions, right? And so,
Yeah.
I feel as though depending on what state you're in, like when we were in Seattle, right?
Yeah.
When we were in Washington State, people didn't really talk about college football.
Yeah, UW was not a conversation.
Yeah, and kind of, but everybody was very mono-focused on the Seahawks.
And everybody
right?
would watch the WSU game.
Yeah, exactly. But we didn't have any NBA, right? And we
Yes,
would root for
after
the
Sonics.
the Gonzaga team
Yeah.
when they went to the Sweet 16, right?
Yeah.
So I think that there is some sort of a delineation there where at least having one good team or within your state does help sort of exhaust that
Yeah.
because you've got options, right?
You're really correct about this. I remember, I think I called into a radio show in like 2000, I guess it would have been 2008.
Mm-hmm.
Rich Rod's first year as Michigan's coach, Rich Rodriguez,
Mm.
who had been very successful at his alma mater, West Virginia. And he came to Michigan and went 3-9.
Yeah.
Which
Beautiful.
I think would have made it our first losing season since the 60s. Bo went
It was a
6-6
building
one
year.
time.
It was a building year.
Yeah, to 5-7.
Yeah.
And so I called in. I'm like, this is messed up because the Tigers had been bad my entire youth. Now they had gotten good by that point. I mean, they had been to the World Series in 06, so they had gotten good. But the Tigers had been bad. The Lions, actually, the Lions had.
They had good years.
We went to the. Barry went to the playoffs at least twice. I think maybe one more time than that. Yeah, and then the Red Wings have been great. But essentially, you knew the Lions were going to end up disappointing you. Whereas again, the Michigan would win the Big Ten. When I was a kid, we won. I don't know, like 12 out of 14 against Ohio State or something. Like things were happening for Michigan football, winning Heisman trophies and things like that. So yeah, it was kind of like I need this because I know I'm not going to get that.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing like with the Red Wings. Like when the Red Wings started to fall apart, I got very grumpy about that because I was super used to them being good.
Yeah. And they've been good for the last 10 years or so.
That not the last like 5.
Yeah.
But before that, they had gone to the playoffs like some of them, like 24 years in a row or something insane.
Yeah.
I mean, it was an enormously long streak.
So
yeah.
would you say that you prefer a franchise that has high highs and low lows as opposed to consistent lows, right? Like,
well, of
obviously,
course,
no. What I'm saying is there's a sort of a comfort, I would say, in the Lions, right? Where it's like you never go in there with high expectations.
That's not how it was on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but when
were you there by then? Were you at the house?
Yeah, it was.
when U of M plays against a bottom 50% team and completely blows it in the first 2/3 of the game, right? You have to feel an additional level of anger, right? And frustration.
Yeah. No, okay, now I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, but they're not a consistently a low performing team.
Yeah.
So I mean, look, I remember once reading somebody saying like, look, if you follow, so again in my life the example would be the Red Wings.
Yeah.
But what I always told people was like the Red Wings are the Yankees, like. So they're the Yankees, or if you were like a Celtics or a Lakers fan in the 80s or whatever, like any of these teams that have, or the Patriots in the last 20 years.
Yeah, or the Warriors.
Any of these teams where you've spent like a pretty long period of time, like knowing that your team is going to be a top 3 or 4 team that season. I heard somebody say like, well, I actually think it's harder because then when it doesn't work out and you thought it really should or whatever. And I guess I would just say like, I prefer being able to be hurt by the sports team.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because the Lions, I mean, it is true. Like I got over the Lions thing. Did we talk about this? Like I got over the Lions thing. Like I didn't really think about it like by the time like we had dinner. On Thanksgiving. And I don't think that would be true if they were like, in the playoffs or I mean, I know that's not true. Like that's harder.
Yeah.
And the thing about major college football is that you're always in the playoffs. Now it's going to change a little bit with this 12-team playoff thing that's coming, but and it's even already it's slightly different. Like there's some like Ohio, they just did the rankings tonight. Ohio State's ranked 5th. So
crazy.
They just got murdered, but they might, they maybe could still make the playoffs. But for the most part, like you lose a game bad. Certainly if you lose 2 games and your season it's not like it's over. There's it's not like there's nothing to play for in terms of having rivalries or win a bowl game or whatever. But the season is fundamentally about like going undefeated.
Well,
like that's it's most of the time the champion now is 1 loss.
Yeah. So, but going undefeated, I mean, that was the metric before there was a championship, right? Like there being a college championship is a relatively new invention.
A single college championship. Yes. Well, and the last season where there wasn't one was 1997 when Michigan was the AP poll champion, and Nebraska was the fraudulent coaches poll champion. I mean, thanks to Phil Fulmer from Tennessee putting us fourth because he was bitter about the Heisman Trophy race. So,
wow. I mean, you have upset some of our listeners who are big Nebraska fans. So
that's true. There are some Nebraska fans who listen to this show.
Yeah.
So
I'm not the one that voted for Michigan to be fourth. And I mean, that's the difference.
there's a reason to be upset. There's a
Yes.
reason to be upset. So how do you think that's changed though? Because I mean, growing up for me, as somebody who wasn't a huge college fan, although we became much more into football. We got more into football when we went to 2 Super Bowls in a row for the
Yeah.
Seahawks, and that was our house was
Yeah, I mean,
one of the
to
many
be
churches
yeah,
in America.
to be fair, all of Washington State decided to be football fans for full 2 years, right? Like, generally
because of how good the Seahawks.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. I mean, like there was a period of time where people, Seahawks were okay, middling to fine, and at that point, people were fans of the Seahawks, but it wasn't a mania like it was when
How do
they
you feel like
hit
the
Super
neon
Bowl.
played into this? I mean, because I think the uniforms were among the most boring before.
Yeah,
It's
And
true.
I hated the neon. I mean, now I don't even notice it.
yeah,
but,
yeah.
It's kind of amazing to me actually that it's lasted as long as it has. But
Yeah,
the but the neon was
Yeah, back when it was just like a light blue and a silver, like
Yeah.
maybe kind of a sick green.
yeah,
but now
well, or
it's-
just kind of a sort of a mom green, like the
Yeah.
green that your mother would wear.
Mhm.
Yeah,
now it's just electric.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know if it's as bad as like Boise's Field,
Mhm.
but I would say that was part of it. I mean,
well, the in Boise's Field, I think, is also part of what has. I mean, they were doing well, but like that's part of what put them
Yeah.
in the consciousness.
Exactly.
yeah. Well, so the thing with the,
add some mythology to
yeah,
it.
well, the thing with the Hawks though is it was, I mean, that was big and it made it a lot easier to tell when somebody was wearing colors because they were
Mhm.
much more aggressive.
Yeah.
But a big part of it though was, I mean, it was everywhere.
Mhm.
It was absolutely everywhere. There wasn't a corner. I mean, we lived in rural Washington comparatively. Like we lived in a suburb of a suburb. We had a couple of acres.
That's what Walker Percy would call an exurb.
Yeah, an exurb. Suburb, an exurb, various.
The exurbs of Memphis come up in a lot of his essays.
Yeah, we lived kind of in locations with like we had acreage and there was tons of land and trees and whatnot. There still wasn't a corner in the small town that didn't have a unofficial 12 merch stand or some guy was
I
just
got you,
out there
yeah,
selling
yeah.
flags and
Mhm.
et cetera. I mean, it was a religion. It was
Mhm.
bona fide. And I don't like to make that comparison often with things, but it was legitimately it was God to an entire godless state for a very long time.
Well, as I know, my brother's a pastor in
Yeah.
in Orchard Park, New York, which is where the Buffalo Bills play.
Mhm.
And I think he would say that that's like constant because they don't even have to be good.
Yeah.
They've
Yeah.
been good most of the time. He's
It's too
been there,
cold
but-
up there for anybody to care about anything else.
Well, and it's of course by far the biggest. I mean, Buffalo. It's this has been a monomania of the past of like the Rust Belt cities or like
Yeah.
looking at the population charts of the biggest Cincy was like the 4th biggest city in the country, like from 1820 to 1920 or whatever. Buffalo is one of those cities that like at a time at one point was one of, I don't know if it was ever I think it probably was a top 10 city in terms of population, but certainly was around there. And so
And now it's just a strip mall.
I mean, it's also sort of one of these so-called hollowed out Rust Belt cities. I mean, it's, you go downtown, there's a bunch of cool, beautiful old buildings and stuff, but the population's like 340,000, and it used to be 900,000 or some nonsense. So, the Bills are kind of the biggest thing in town. I mean, it's an NFL franchise. I mean, to be honest, I bet that demographically it is more similar to Green Bay now than any other town is. So
Is your brother the kind of guy, and this is a kind of dude who is a preacher or pastor who either wears a
Easily, I don't know. No, definitely not. That.
Yeah, I'm just asking, right? I don't know this.
I want to know what the
wears a jersey to preach on the Sunday, or says, "I'm going to try to get y'all out early today. I know the game's on after this." Right? Is it in that demographic?
Well, he's LCMS, so
Yeah, I mean, I've only visited for what we would call the traditional service.
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, they might have some. I don't remember that church. They might have some name for it, like Living Heritage or something like that.
yeah.
I think that's what it's called at my parents' church. And so I've only seen him in a, some, I don't know exactly which vestments he had on, but at least something like an alb, and probably a stole. And I don't think he wears a chasuble even when he's the celebrant, but
Yeah.
So I've only seen him in a more traditional appearance than a Josh Allen jersey.
Yes. Oh, but
I
in the
think-
jersey of the church, though, in a way.
I mean, yeah, but the colors aren't for the team; they're for the season.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
I mean, it's not a
exactly.
team
There you
thing.
go.
I
Unless
mean,
you're
all
a,
the same
I guess,
team.
unless you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan.
And then you get a lot of the year, a lot of the year, you're happy. Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
For anything that you want to say about a fan base of any sport, at least you're not in Philadelphia.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As far as
What's up with Philly?
well,
You
I mean,
think,
as far as religion is concerned, it's more or less of a high or a low thing. It's more of a constant thing, and also, I mean, whether they win or they lose in the playoffs, half of Philadelphia burns down.
that's
every
what we
single
say
time.
about Michigan State, right? Like win or lose, some couches are getting burned.
Yeah.
That's what everybody always says. I mean, and
Yeah,
at this point, it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I was
Yeah.
listening to
It's a little meta now.
Yeah, but they grease the poles in Philly and stuff. And I was listening to the podcast where this guy was like, "Yeah, I walked out of a Sixers playoff game that we lost, and I just went to every Maserati I could find and ripped the M off of it." And that was just what he did. So
You got to love that kind of culture.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Now
Yeah.
Philly's obviously famous. The marshmallows with batteries in them or whatever.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
or snowballs with whatever it
Yeah,
was.
snowballs with
Maybe
batteries.
both.
Yeah, I think that
Marshmallows with batteries actually may have been at Michigan State.
Yeah.
They used to throw marshmallows on the field. And
Yeah.
I think it got banned when kids started putting things in.
There's this famous story with the Flyers where one of their famous coaches, I'm forgetting off the top of my head who it was, died, but they did like a memorial for him. And everybody got those, light up bracelets that they do at concerts nowadays. You know what I mean? Where like if you're at a, like something like Coldplay or whatever,
Yeah.
U2, they'll give you a bracelet.
Like a globe bracelet thing? Like
well, so it's connected via like Bluetooth.
oh,
And
okay.
it flashes certain patterns so
Yeah.
that you're a part of the light show.
Mhm.
So they had a light show, and it was, to memorialize this guy. And then after the Flyers had 2 goals scored on them, those all ended up on the ice. And the announcer was like, "Guys," like literally talk, "Guys, stop. Seriously, please stop." And then, of course, like 5 seconds later, they bring the Zambonis out, they get it all cleared up. 5 seconds later, everything, they get scored up against,
Yeah.
just throwing them back all. And then eventually, like, "Guys, one more time, and we get a fine. Philadelphia, come on now, Philly. Come on, Philly." They clean it up, happens
That's
again.
the
All of
league.
it goes on the
Yeah.
ice. And they're like, "You happy, Philly?"
I think they are. I mean, I think that is the league now understanding the culture of their own city here.
Yeah,
And that's,
exactly.
the Phillies aren't original 6, but they're in the next 6. They're in the 1967 expansion. I mean, that's
Yeah.
an old franchise. You got to treat them with a little more respect
Well,
than
and
fining
also
them.
you saying "please stop" is the
Ultimate,
perfect way to make it continue, right? That's not.
Oh,
how you
sort of like
handle it.
how please clap is
Yeah,
not
yeah.
a...
Yes.
Ooh.
Well, I mean, in Detroit, the thing that started, I don't know when it started, but they didn't win a lot in like the 70s and 80s. They were known as the Dead Wings. And then the 90s, again, when I was a kid, they started throwing octopuses
Yeah.
or octopi on the ice. I guess it's represented in the original playoffs. You had to win 8 games. And so
Yeah.
this, I think, is what it referred back to. And so now you get like Red Wings merch with a octopus on it or something.
Yeah.
And
Even though
then-
there's a Kraken team, it exists.
in Nashville, they adopted this and started throwing catfish on the ice, which I think
Yeah.
that was pretty hilarious. I
The
thought that was
Nashville,
good.
the Predators are a funny franchise because they're really young and really good, and the fans for Nashville of all places are just rabid in a way that's
I have no respect for any of the Southern hockey teams. I think it's stupid. Yeah,
I'm a Yotes fan, but it's fine. I'd have no respect for them either.
Well, didn't they try to fold? Like
Yeah.
they tried to fold. The league bought them or something,
Yeah,
right?
no, they've tried to. They've like about once a year. There's a discussion about whether or not they should exist.
And now the
but
NHL.
the thing is, though, the Sabres were worse than them last year of all play. Buffalo.
Okay.
So they're not the worst team in the league. Not every year.
It's
This
not
year,
about
yeah.
the goodness or the bad. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
I think the Lightning have won 2 cups.
Yeah,
I think, and I feel like either the other Florida team or Carolina's. I think Carolina won I think they won the cup coming out of the lockout or strike, whichever one. I think it was a lockout in the off.
yeah.
So a bunch of these teams have won. I object to them existing. That's not the quality. It's just the mere fact that we're putting all these hockey because if I'm not mistaken, the NHL is now the largest in terms of number of franchises, major North American sports league.
No way.
No,
More
that
than
would make sense.
baseball.
No, it would make
Wow.
sense.
I think it's 34 teams.
Yeah, I was like, so there's 4 conferences,
Well, yeah, it is something like
and
that.
they
but
average like 11 teams apiece.
Well, that would be like 44. They're not
Yeah,
that
I
big.
know. I mean, maybe one of them's small.
Well, I don't remember what they did. I mean,
Yeah.
I think they did go to a 4-division. I think they're still in 2 conferences, but 4 divisions.
4 divisions,
and so
you're right.
they're,
It's 4
they're
divisions.
probably
2
like
conferences.
8 or 9 teams each.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying it's the least. I mean, I like hockey. I love hockey. It's and like playoff hockey is probably the most entertaining
100%.
sports thing. I mean, you're nervous the entire time. It's very anxiety inducing, and that is most of the reason people watch sports. But it doesn't make sense that the least popular in terms of like how many people watch it and whatever league is also the largest, and it dilutes the product. And so my position is like if you had 24 teams, your hockey would be awesome, and probably more people would watch it.
Exactly.
In terms of as a TV thing, which appears to be what sports is mostly about right now. Is like it's a TV show.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I will say like they have been intelligent about like they're in Seattle because the NBA is not, so there's no winter sport there, so that's where they're at. And Las Vegas, I think they were the first franchise there, right? They got there a couple years before the Raiders did.
Before the Raiders.
I understand.
And
like
they won the Stanley Cup somehow.
their first year, right?
Yeah, it was insane.
Yeah. Well, it speaks to the dilution of the talent. if you
Yeah.
ask me, but-
Well, so speaking on that, the TV aspect, right? I think that one of the reasons why esports as an entity, right? Electronic sports, video games, professional, has a really hard time breaking into the general ether is people who watch it on TV. Like it's been on ESPN too before, right? Like people have put
like people playing Madden against each other or something.
I mean, like
or Tony Hawk skateboarder games.
Games like Dota, like Counter-Strike, things like that.
Just like regular video games.
Yes, regular old video games.
So this is a little bit of a revelation for me as an older millennial.
Yeah.
Esports doesn't refer to sports video games.
No, esports is sport. Like leagues attached to video games.
Okay.
Just a general video game.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
So, it huge in a lot of different countries, right? As you might imagine, South Korea, full of people that love StarCraft and League of Legends, right?
More people watched the StarCraft championship in 2015 than
the Super
in
Bowl.
America watched the Super Bowl. So very big. In South Korea.
You're saying like a higher percentage of South Koreans
No,
watch.
just numbers.
Numbers, just the amount of people in the world who watched.
Wait.
Yeah.
What?
Yes. Yeah, total number of people in the world who watched the StarCraft finals was more than those who watched the Super Bowl that year.
All right.
Yeah, I wish it was not true. I mean, honestly,
I'm not even trying to hate. I'm really just. I don't understand.
You don't think the metrics work out?
Yeah.
No, I'm not. Yeah. I'm not denying you. I'm just trying to process it.
Yeah. But the problem is that you bring a person off the street, average Joe, and you set them in front of a TV and say, "All right, watch this." They have no idea what's going on. All of it's too much information, right? Way too much minutia attached to it.
Yeah. It's about how hard it is to like learn a new video game.
Exactly. Right. And so, and then it's played at a competitive level, right? And people are talking in competitive terminology, right? You have no idea what's going on. And so it's really hard to break into. If you put somebody in front of a TV and say, here's soccer, here's how it works, 2 sentences, these guys are trying to get the ball into that goal. Right.
You really don't have to tell me anything. Any questions? Be like, why don't they pick it up? You're like, not allowed. Like,
okay, cool.
All right. Then every other part of this, I completely understand.
Exactly. Right. It's so much easier to pitch that to the average person.
How come that guy can touch it? He's the goalie. He's allowed. Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah. And that's it. That's all you need. Right. So I think that's the biggest barrier there. But while we're in a separation of topic, I think it's important that we talk to our patrons. Thank you so much, guys and gals out there who support us on the Patreon. If you're interested out there, we have a tiered system on our Patreon. At the $5 tier, you can watch our exclusive Patreon-only Patreon episodes, which we record after this one. Tends to be a little bit more off the beaten path than our usual episodes. So if you're into that kind of thing, cool. Want to shout out to our top patrons, as we do every week. Joe Papalardo, Sammy Roberts, and Amber and Zach Strehle. Thank you so much. You guys are really helping us make this show happen. At the $10 tier, you can ask questions to both us and the guest. And so I got questions from our patrons.
Is this live? Are they watching us right now?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, that'd be cool.
That's coming in the future.
Yeah, we would hope to make that happen.
Responsive questions would be really interesting.
Yes, exactly.
Well, this one, I guess it depends.
Kind of like, funnily enough, this lines up. So speaking of sports, Luke Martin asks, are you watching FIFA? If not, why are you so uncultured? USA beat Iran today. We're qualifying America. Okay. So what are your thoughts?
Well, the thing about the FIFA is that it's not American.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have watched well, I napped for about half of and watched about half of the second game. That was the England game, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, the tie.
And I guess I pretty much watched. I think I watched most of, maybe all of the first one, or at least like the TV was on for all of it against Wales,
Another
which
tie.
was also a tie.
Yeah.
And then I only watched the key plays of the thing today because it happened on a work day and I was working.
Yes.
So the Iran game, I saw like 9 plays of it, whatever YouTube TV spat at me. And then I also watched the key plays of like 5 other games. And in like 8 minutes, I had seen all the key plays of a bunch of games today. I watched the key plays of Germany against Spain because that seemed like a big deal.
Yeah.
Also a tie.
Yeah, it is soccer.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of a low variance type deal here.
Yeah.
All right, so you're speaking on of what you have consumed. What are your thoughts on what you consumed?
On the FIFA? First, I wouldn't have called it the FIFA. I would have said the World Cup.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is kind of strange that he said that. But hey.
Or maybe just the soccer.
Yeah.
That's what Tony Kornheiser. Have you seen the soccer? Did you watch the baseball? Now I'm the one doing intergenerational mockery. What do I think? I mean, I played soccer when I was a kid. I stopped when I was maybe 13 or something like that. I do think it's pretty boring. Compared with other sports. I mean, I'll tell you this, my little
I don't think so.
I guess it was the Wales. Yeah, it was the Wales game.
Oh, yeah.
We're watching this with my boys.
Yeah.
And they're just losing their minds like over the flopping.
Yeah.
And like the lack of action. They're like, why isn't anything happening? And Dan, my brother-in-law, is like kind of trying to defend. He's like, no, lots is happening. This is all, it's all happening.
Yeah.
Life's happening. Other people in the room were referring to it as football, which really made them laugh. I mean, they didn't get offended. They just laughed at it. And then when they saw, I don't remember which side it was, but when they saw one of the teams like working the ball backwards towards their own goal to the point that they actually involved the goalie in passing it, they quit. They just laughed and left. They're just like, you're not even going the right direction. And I think it's because their sports are basically framed by football. And even, what's a sport that's visually somewhat similar, basketball, you're not allowed to move the ball backwards. Hockey, they're aware of like there's this like 2-line concept where like once you get it into the zone, into the offensive zone, if it leaves there, like you got a problem. Like you fight to keep it in there. And so as they're just watching these guys like pass backwards, they're just like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So
soccer's already rough. I watched the Portugal Ghana game, which was a good game, but somebody was trying to run the clock out, and I wanted to jump off of something. I was like, this is so boring.
because trying to score and running the clock out, they're not that different.
They're not.
But your subconscious, like Malcolm Gladwell could probably write a book about, not that I've read any of his actual books, but based on what I hear, based on what I hear, like he could probably write a book on how like your brain recognizes the difference in soccer between like trying to score and not trying to score.
Yeah.
Because nobody can articulate it, right? It's like what I was saying about Otis Redding versus other soul music. Like you can't really explain analytically what the difference is, but you can, when you
feel it. Yeah.
But like I want to be clear. Like I'm not hating on people that get a big thrill from soccer. I like the World Cup. I like international competition. Like I watched, what the Olympics come around. Like I'll watch fencing and ping pong and stuff. So or table tennis.
Yeah.
So I'm not hating
2 really eclectic picks, by the way.
Those 2,
fencing and table tennis.
Just the esoteric,
one versus
esoteric
one
sports. Honestly, almost any sport, if it is at a high. I mean, it's one of the guys who played in the Blues Brothers. So I guess he was. It basically was the Saturday Night Live band. I think the horn sections that's where they got those guys. So he came up, I'm sure, as a jazz player, maybe jazz and classical, and so he's asked to do this Blues Brothers stuff, and he's like, this is really simple stuff. Not that interested. And then he's like, but when it's good, it's good.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's true. Like I often say, like people who are good at a job, even if it's a job that like it seems boring or uninteresting. If you watch somebody like this is why like Dirty Jobs was an interesting show, or like there was that video that was going around a couple weeks ago. I think it's going around before. Some guy working on some kind of oil rig set up.
Just like grabbing it,
swinging it. You can't even tell what's going on, but you're like, that man's impressive. So I think like anything, a small dose of any sport played at a high level can be entertaining.
I'm gonna push that to its extreme. I'm gonna say there is professional Excel spreadsheet management. Right?
We've talked about it on the show.
There are competitions where people get together and they say, "Hey, this is the problem. Solve it as fast and most effectively as possible."
It's a ton of fun to watch. I'll say that. I'll throw that.
I mean, that reminds me of like this guy who again was like rocketing around the internet maybe 7 or 8 months ago, I think, who can look at a picture from Google Street View.
Yes, Rainbolt.
Rain Man is what you're probably thinking.
Yeah, no, I think his name is Rainbolt, but who just
and he's like really he's really arrogant
USA
about it too, right?
Yeah.
But then like what he explains is very interesting. And so I mean, it would probably be somewhat similar to that. But the esports thing, I do want to talk about that. Yeah. I want to hate on it a little bit.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And I know that maybe that makes me sound like an old man, get off my lawn, whatever. But I just don't think that it's the same. I mean, and I guess if you told me like 1.2 billion people or whatever watch somebody do Excel sheets, I'd probably be like, I don't think that should happen again.
Yeah.
And I think that the reason is like, think about like the way, before our time, because we're all about the same age. There, like ABC would do the Wide World of Sports.
Yeah.
Right. And it was relatively rare for sporting events to be broadcast live, but it wasn't that rare to see like reels of them. And it could be it could be like a guy climbing a mountain or a guy, swimming the English Channel or whatever, or a conventional league sport or whatever.
Yeah.
But like the narrative is all like, overcoming, pushing through the pain and doing something no one else has done and, whatever. And, I'm not really hating on people who like enjoy playing video games.
Yeah.
I mean, not too much. I mean, I think it probably is a hobby that tends to vice more readily than maybe most hobbies do.
Yeah, 100%.
Most hobbies that I wouldn't just say like up front you shouldn't be engaged in. I don't think I would be like absolutely no video games ever. Well, I mean, I own a Nintendo 64, so obviously I'm with it. But
there you go.
And I have a GameCube, but I can't find any of the discs for it.
A tragedy. Mario Sunshine.
No, I liked Mario Tennis.
That's a classic.
When I was in college.
Speaking of sports,
tennis,
esports is
and the Mario Party.
Yeah.
No, that's how you know that Mario is the wrong pronunciation. Mario Party. That rhymes. Yeah. Gosh, those Mario people. But yeah, I think that the esports thing, like I think that there's been a little bit too much of a willingness to acquiesce by the normies. And I think that this is one where probably more parents should be saying to their kids who are really good at this, like, kid, you're probably too good at this. And I think you need to do something different.
So the thing that a big part of this actually is that I personally believe the moving thing about sports for me, if I'm enjoying sports in any capacity, and I guess this also includes esports, whatever, but is narrative, the rivalries, the stories, like the fact that this is an unscripted but still incredibly narrative thing that we're doing.
Yeah.
And a lot of that can be transferred into fiction. We have great television that's fictional about football. We have great television about basketball. We have good movies about all these things. They've tried over and over again with esports, and they can't do it. They just can't make that transition.
Yeah, but there is still good narrative within esports, though.
That's true.
As a guy that likes fighting games, right? Like a 1v1 situation, right? Relatively simple.
Mortal Kombat?
Yeah. We're talking Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, that kind of a thing, where it's like 1v1, it's simple. You know that guy. They're trying to kill each other.
The guy meaning the friends playing, or the
it could be
Ken and Ryu who are the characters?
No, I mean the people playing. Generally, you're watching top 8s at some tournament. It's the same 10 guys over and over and over again. So the same kind of situation arises.
Right, and then there's people do spend about as much time training as they would for.
I'm sure they do. Yeah,
but of course it's not nearly as rigorous physically.
I would also say, by the way, like I think I don't know, like. I have a lesser but related, kind of concern, maybe less of an objection, but more of a concern about the poker situation. The poker on TV thing. Like, I've watched it for like 7 or 8 minutes at a time. I really can't imagine watching it for any longer than that.
I know guys that do.
People get good at it too. And games are cool. I'm okay with that. So I'm not, like I said, I don't really want to be like a full-fledged like reactionary hater here, but I think that the esports thing is probably bad. And then like the watching it thing, like the playing it is one thing, but the watching it without I mean, without all that like physical stuff, that real. I mean, am I going to get like dumped on by the internet here? I mean, you're telling me there's like 1.2 billion people out there that are watching a game I've never even heard of.
Yeah, I mean, you're entering into the minority when it comes to this.
Is this another getting on the 30% side?
Actually, I think that for most people, that's not the case. If
I think
pull the
you're
average
right.
American, you're definitely in the majority.
I mean, if you pulled the average Reddit user, it'd be different.
I'd fall on your side more often than not, because I do think that a lot of what this does is that unlike a professional sport, I think minus maybe football, because like if you know, my twin brother, you know, has 2 broken collarbones.
My twin brother?
No, excuse me, my
your little brother.
My little brother. Yeah, Dylan definitely has not broken a bone in his body ever once in his life.
No.
My little brother, who was
haven't played enough sports,
high school quarterback, broke his collarbone twice, one on each side, and it's like he's gotten to the point now where him doing competitive, rigorous sporting activities is like kind of a dangerous proposition. I mean, he played intramural football and got a concussion. You know, like I think
that's not related to the collarbone thing.
No, that's not. I think he just hustles too hard.
Yeah. It's a little too much hustle.
But you know, like in the same way that's the case with physical stuff, I think that you can actually cause like an addiction, like a legitimate crippling addiction, if your focus is on that and you're not actually up to snuff. You're not a quality enough player, except for. Rather than you maybe having some physical injuries, you might have just wasted a really large portion. And you're not building the same kind of relationships. You're not building the team building structures.
I mean, speaking of monomania, I mean, I do think that the criticism of like the early sports specialization, I think that's really key. Again, like this makes me sound like the reactionary dad man of Hillsdale, but that is kind of my gig. So
that's your brand.
It's but I think it's probably accurate. One thing that you said a minute ago that I think is really interesting is this idea of narrative, but kind of forced within the confines of a game. I mean, it's kind of related to this famous, concept of art needing external constraint.
100%.
And so, that's interesting in terms of it being, I mean, again, like it's basically a TV show. It's unscripted TV, but it's unscripted but prompted, right? Like,
well, it doesn't even have to be on TV.
Right? Yeah, right. But I'm just saying, like in terms, right?
There's always a narrative because there's a competitive through line, right? Like
there is a tournament structure,
even if it's Little League, and you don't even have to have a kid in the Little League. You can probably identify good guys and bad guys, very easily.
Yeah,
and something,
or at least impose good guys and bad guys upon them.
In Little League, usually based on haircut, which is actually more up to the mom. But
but like doing that means, and this is why I've always had like a weird amount of respect for sports entertainment, professional wrestling, is because they say to themselves, well, let's just synthesize all of that into just that, right?
And so just the drama,
right?
So just the narrative.
Well, in the working out,
Well, and what they do is incredibly physically demanding and interesting and performative, but like it's a joke in some capacity because we all know how it's all going to turn out. But at the same time, it's like, oh, we realize what it is you guys like about this, and we're just going to make it the focus of it. I think that if people always say that, and this, I don't, my least favorite sports organization would probably either be the NBA or FIFA because of corruption reasons. But there's a reason why they're like that, especially the NBA.
Is the NBA as corrupt as FIFA?
Not as FIFA. No, not as corrupt as FIFA. There's not as much money involved. But as far as because you say it's a TV show primarily at this point, when it comes to constructing playoffs and whatnot, there's a ton of funny business going on. It's not entirely random.
You know about the 1985 draft? I mean, are you believing the frozen envelope?
I don't know this story.
It's funny to think about it this way, but people think that the NBA has at times been biased towards the New York Knicks.
Is that just because the Yankees are in the same city?
Well, I mean, I think it's because it's New York, and I think they won a couple championships in the 70s.
Yeah, I've heard that New York is a better city when the Knicks are winning. But even it's different than like the Mets or the Jets.
Well, those things it would be more divisive because there's two teams.
Yeah.
In the case of the Jets and the Giants, the teams are in New Jersey, but Allegiance is theoretically New York based. Yeah. So but there's only one. Well, now there's two. But for a long time there was only one. I mean, I don't know. Actually, I guess the Nets were right there, but they were called the New Jersey.
Yeah, and then the Harlem Globetrotters, of course.
Well, right. Yes, I saw that when I was like 10. That was really cool. Yeah, they did win. They won that game there. I saw.
Good for them. Yeah, still undefeated.
They pulled it out. I mean, I think they only won by like 110. But it was closer for a lot of the game.
Yeah.
But the idea is that the Knicks, because New York is the Big Apple, and not only, I think the theory is that the league believes that if the biggest city has a good team, then it's good for the league. And so the idea was that Patrick Ewing was the clear number one pick. I think this would have been 85 because I think Akeem was in 84. So Ewing is the obvious number one pick in 85 coming out of Georgetown. And the claim is that the envelope was frozen so that it was cold, so that David Stern could tell which one it is. Because instead of it being ping pong balls or whatever, it was pulling an envelope. And I don't know how they did I don't know if the lottery rules were different or what, but because there weren't, like hundreds. Well, maybe I don't know. Maybe it was a bigger drum than I remember. But you can see the video of this on the YouTube. And he does kind of shuffle the envelopes a little bit. And I'm not saying I believe it. Because
so then why did they choose such a specific methodology? Like the way that they did that, and they point to it.
I've seen NBA truther videos where they're like, "This is obviously earmarked" or etc. But the frozen envelope, I
don't know. Maybe this isn't the most popular of the theories, but I didn't invent it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting. Okay,
I wasn't born when the NBA draft lottery of 85
could have fooled me.
That was about 4 months later, probably after the draft lottery. But
one more question from our patrons because we got to get to it. We gotta,
we try to.
They're pulling our.
We did the FIFA. Okay.
Yeah, we did the
second
FIFA.
one is for your other. I'm not gonna say your other love. That's very it's very loaded. But the other thing you're very interested in. What was the first album you bought? This is from Joe Papalardo. And let's further clarify. Let's say your own money. You actively went out and you purchased this album.
You went to. What were they called?
Radio Shack? I don't know.
No, it's Studio City or what was the? I'm sorry.
There, in Ipsy where I grew up, I would usually go to an independent store called Rubber Soul.
Good.
But if I was going to go get something that I knew would be available, Borders Books, Borders Books and Music, I think is what they were calling it at the time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah,
that's a tough one.
That is tough. Yeah,
I think maybe the first CD I ever owned was a Monkees Greatest Hits, but it was at Christmas. It was in my stocking.
Okay.
So then, what about say?
Or maybe my sister gave it to me because I think maybe put it on my list. Maybe.
Well, maybe so. If that's a little bit of a tough one, the first one that you bought with your own money. What about the first one that you anticipated?
Like the one coming out?
Yeah.
I mean, very few.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, you're more of an old fashioned.
I was more discovering. Yeah, I would go into when I was running errands for law firms in Ann Arbor. I'd go to Encore Records, getting paid to record shop.
Yeah,
nobody seemed to mind. And I would instantly go to the Allman Brothers section and the ZZ Top section and the Winter Brothers, which is not an act, but Johnny Winter and Edgar Winter. And I would check and see if they had any vinyl that I didn't have with those guys yet.
Yeah, is it Edgar Winter was the guy who didn't he end up making the battle? It wasn't.
Yeah, he did the soundtrack, I think.
No, he did the. Yeah, he did. He became Scientologist, and he made like the album that was a reinterpretation of Battlefield Earth, I think it was. And I've listened to chunks of it. It's wild stuff.
I've listened to almost everything that Edgar Winter's ever recorded, and not that.
Yeah.
And it's not so much because I wouldn't, it's just I haven't. But
from what I've heard of it and from what I've seen online, and the reason why I checked it out is that even though it's a very interesting work on its own, and I have received correspondence from a particular church because of things that I've said about them online before, so I won't step on anything. But they other than
support, I think Leah Remini is out there.
Yeah,
she can help you.
I think that the general
doing good work. Actually,
I think some of the general hokiness of it, when you kind of look past it, there is still like some musical chop to it. It's got some value.
So we're here talking about the Winter Brothers, Edgar and Johnny. I don't think that Scott's ever going to let me do even Johnny, let alone Edgar. On his political beats show. Edgar is. Self-identifies as the weird kid who played all the instruments, whereas his brother Johnny, who's older, I think he's about 3 years older, was a blues guitar virtuoso, and really he was kind of the first
one of the weirdest looking blues guitar virtuosos of all time.
If you can think of a weirder one, let me know. But I mean, so for the again the uninitiated out there, these guys are both albino
and long hair and skinny as a rail, and just
And Johnny was a heroin addict a lot for much of his career, so he stayed really, really skinny. But Johnny was, I think I'm right about this. In terms of Americans, he was the first really famous white blues guitarist.
Yeah.
And white as hell as well.
Yeah, that's right. The white. There's plenty of puns like that throughout their career. Right? They're always either making brother puns or albino puns. Edgar did a record called "White Man's Blues." Maybe just a song. It's good though.
Yeah.
And so they're very different people. And my dad was a huge Edgar Winter fan because of Edgar Winter's second record, which is called Edgar Winter's White Trash.
Nice.
Which is the White Trash was his band that he put together, a bunch of kids from East Texas and Louisiana, and they did R&B, and it's really, really good. And they just did one studio record, and then they did a live record it's also good. Johnny plays on the studio record out of his first stint in rehab, right? It's his first appearance after that.
Yeah.
And so then after that, Edgar did his first record. Is called Entrance, and it is a jazz album, and it's like a little weird.
Yeah.
And have you listened to that one?
I don't think I've listened to much of it. My vision is just sort of picturing I'm just picturing right now him hunched over a keyboard.
Yeah,
that's the gargoyle-esque manner.
A bunch of his is it like a guitar situation?
Yeah, so I'm thinking more of his guitar situation.
Yeah, so that's late. That's a little later.
Yeah.
But not a lot later.
Yeah, the kind of guy who is playing two stints at once, sort of thing.
Yes, and also so
a lot of the stuff I've heard is in that vein.
Yeah, so Entrance is very different from that. I really do recommend. I think it's a great record. And then the next one is White Trash, and then there's the White Trash live album. And then he's like, fine, I'll just go completely commercial.
Yeah.
So he records an album as the Edgar Winter Group called They Only Come Out at Night, and that has the hit song Frankenstein, which I think is like credited as like one of the first big synth tracks.
Yeah.
Because he's like a very good musician, and he's inventive and whatever. And so he's like messing around with the synthesizer, and it is, I'm sure it's his biggest hit, but it also had like poppier hits on it. Like Free Ride is probably the most famous of those.
Yeah.
And then it's like so many other people, it's been like over 45 years. I mean, I think that record actually came out 50 years ago. I think it came out in 72, maybe 73. So it's been around 50 years, and he probably hasn't achieved a tenth of the commercial success on anything within the last 40 of them. But
yet he still keeps coming out with music. I assume.
Yeah, but I've never seen Edgar live, but I saw my dad and I saw Johnny Winter live in like 06, and he was pretty broken down. But it was actually better than I anticipated. I was concerned it was going to be, like I've avoided certain acts that I'm into. Like I avoided ZZ Top because I didn't want to see like these 70-year-old guys like pretending to do coordinated dancing.
Yeah.
Not really even dancing.
What with them swinging their guitars, you mean?
Yeah. Actually,
the ZZ Top move.
What's the big festival in England? Is it Glastonbury?
No, it's Glastonbury. It's Glastonbury.
I think it's from that.
Yeah.
There's a video from a few years ago when Dusty had like a back injury or something. The bass player. And so he's playing a synth bass. So he's like just standing there like playing these single bass notes on the synth. Well, Billy Gibbons, who is like my favorite guitar player. I mean, there's many people who have earned the appellation my favorite guitar player, but Billy Gibbons really is like one of my people. And he's over there like doing this, like all this rocking back and forth with the guitar thing. And Dusty's just like aggressively hitting. Because like some of their songs, you think about those songs they had that were hits in the 80s.
Yeah. Like off Eliminator and stuff.
Yeah, off Eliminator, right? Yeah. So there are a lot of bass lines that are just like, like, and some of those are synth lines and whatever. And so he's just like standing there, like, hitting the same note. I'm like,
audience is going crazy.
It's kind of like, and then, but sadly Dusty died. But the point is, like, I've avoided seeing some of these, vintage acts that I'm into because,
nowadays there's like a 50% chance that they have like one member who's up there who's an original, or even sometimes they don't have one member, especially for bands from the 70s.
I saw the Beach Boys, and I think Mike Love was the only guy.
That's classic Mike Love.
Yeah.
Mike Love is like, he has transformed himself into one of the great assholes of like music, and in a truly interesting way.
I think you can go see the Temptations right now. And
Really?
they're like
Oh.
probably multiple revolutions from having a single original member.
Oh yeah, but they were a machine band anyway.
Well, that's true, but David, like they had people like
Yeah.
David Ruffin was the lead singer, and
Yeah.
like he was a great singer. Like the guy, if he hadn't been an assembly line Motown guy, he
Yeah.
could have had his own records or whatever. But yeah, you're right. That's true. They were.
Fun
Is
fact.
Barry Gordy alive? Real quick. I'm sorry.
He's either dead or Canadian. I mean, that's how this works.
Yeah.
So, I can't imagine he's still alive, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'd have a hard time imagining.
It seems like you would know if you would have seen him at a thing or whatever.
Yeah,
that's
and he
true,
would have made
yeah.
a fool of himself in some way.
I hope not.
Fun fact: the Beach Boys are adjacent to the Manson murders, just
That's
by
true.
1 degree.
Yes, they
Yeah.
are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was in that made-for-TV movie that was on ABC when I was a kid.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I haven't
Yeah.
heard of such
So
a thing.
then there
Yeah.
was a scene of Brian Wilson saying, "Get the spider off my face," because he was on drugs.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Yeah. Ah, jeez. Yeah.
That's what you get for being the brains behind the Beach Boys.
Yeah.
You get a spider
You
on
can't
your
be the
face.
braids without a little bit of
Yeah.
little something.
It's funny though. Mike Love's hilarious to me though because I'm sorry for sticking on Mike Love, who's an annoying guy, but the fact that he was instrumental in the second Beach Boys revival with Kokomo and the rest of that, like that was just him. It was just him.
Did you ever
Um,
see the Muppets version of Kokomo?
No, I don't think so.
I must have. Speaking of the combined VHS DVD player, it must
Yeah.
have been VHS of
The Muppet Show.
no.
Or was it like a special?
I think it
thing?
must have been the VHS of Muppet Treasure Island
Oh, okay.
before. I think it was before, but maybe it was at whatever, either before the credits or after.
I
Before
feel like we had a
one of
copy
these
of
things.
Muppet Treasure Island on VHS, and I don't remember this.
Who knows? Maybe it was a special edition.
Yeah,
Maybe it was the
yeah.
one that came, in a McDonald's Happy Meal. or
Yeah.
something like that. But it had the Muppets doing Kokomo.
Yeah.
Mm.
Have you ever seen that video of you know who Chet Hanks is, right?
Chet Hanks?
Yeah.
Is this the guy?
Chet Hayes, otherwise known as.
He is the son of
Tom
Tom
Hanks.
Hanks.
Tom
and
Hanks'
so the
son.
brother of Colin?
Yeah, and he's the guy who like he speaks in a patois, like he sounds like a Jamaican guy, and
What?
it's really alienating because he's this
Is-
skinny white dude.
Is his mom Rita Wilson?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I believe so.
Yeah.
But he
Speaks in a patois.
in a
Yeah,
patois.
and he also
he's-
raps,
Yes,
right?
he raps.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like there's videos of him just being like, Chet Hanks, do that thing, papa. It's just him. And he sounds about like I do, right?
yeah.
Very iffy. But he there's a video of him drunk in the back of a limo. And he's in the back of the limo, he's drunk and blasting like so loud that it's breaking the iPhone speaker. Like out of the speaker of the limo is just Kokomo. He's like, "Yo, you gotta go home right now and listen to Kokomo by the Beach Boys." And he's just screaming it over. He goes, "You listen to this, you gotta go home and listen to
Yeah,
this."
it'd be an interesting list of like there's all these these great artists who have
Yeah.
committed so many sins after their what's the thing that Jack Black says like in High Fidelity,
Yeah.
how do you evaluate a great artist? Do you forgive them for their Latter-day sins or whatever? And nobody's answered that question since
No.
either Jack
No.
Black improvising, or more likely whoever did the screenplay,
Yeah.
or maybe that guy himself who wrote that and so many other famous books, Nick something,
Yeah.
Hornby,
Yeah.
maybe that guy. but it's a little bit weird because what sometimes happens is historical revisionism takes
Mhm.
place.
Yeah.
And people start to tell you that like later stuff is actually good.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, which is
So how much time do we have? 'Cause
we're actually about out of time.
okay, we're about out of time. So let's tease this then for the Patreon because I have a weird thought about this particular thing that I've
Okay.
been cooking on for a little bit.
About the things that hipsters in 2035 are going to be saying about Bob Dylan's albums from like the aughts.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. There is. I think there's a couple of things moving at the same
Which,
time.
knowing that
cause
Bob Dylan will still be releasing records, will be his middle period.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
Yeah,
he will be like freaking Hawkins, right? Like he'll be in a wheelchair, right?
It's,
releasing robotic.
He could eventually get added to the joke of, it's important for our generation to think about what kind of world we'll be leaving for Keith Richards and Willie Nelson. He could get added.
exactly.
Yeah.
But we lost
Gosh.
one of our venerable, which was the Queen, right? Like,
Yeah.
Well,
that and Betty White a year.
It's true.
A year ago.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
been about a year
Old.
actually since
Yeah.
she died. So
Yeah.
those were the ones. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We're going to continue this on the Patreon. Feel free to sign up if you like. Is there anything that you want to mention, plug? I know that. I mean, you are
There's
a
no
public
sales.
figure. Yeah, there's no sales.
I don't have any sales.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there you
You're
go.
not running right now.
Pay your taxes.
Yeah. Well, we're always right.
yeah. Pay your state taxes.
Pay your taxes, or eventually some guy with a gun will take your stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying it's the best system, but it's the one we got.
And also, actually, if you enjoyed his discourses on music, you should check out Political Beats. It's a National Review podcast. You've been a guest twice now.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, you guys. The show goes over discographies. One of my favorite podcasts. Not only because I know the hosts, but I really enjoy the show. And Andrew's been on a couple of times. Did a really good job. So
Yeah,
I'll
I've
check
been on
that
twice. Gives me a shot of being the first 3-time guest, which I'm sure won't happen, but I got a shot.
There you go.
out. You got to beat Mark Davis out for that.
Yeah.
And a couple of others. John Miller's probably angling right now
Yeah,
as
exactly.
we speak.
As we speak. See,
the,
why are
the
you on this
machinations?
podcast?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
politics of podcasts.
And
I
if-
should be
if,
there
you know-
plotting right now,
Yeah.
and John is getting an edge.
If you do listen, then you should get in their comment section and try to get me on the show. I've been trying for years, but apparently I'm not a big enough public figure.
Well, this can only help.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
exactly.
All right, well,
One
thank you
step
so
at a
much
time.
for being on the show. We're
Yeah.
going to take a quick break up on the Patreon. See you guys then.
Boom.